As teachers, we all have our strengths, and for me, it's definitely writing. I love teaching writing. However, for the average student, this is the most difficult part of the IELTS test, in particular, task 2. So for you, as a new teacher, you really need to learn as much as you can about task 2 and exactly how to teach it. Well, luckily enough, that's what we're going to do today. So let's get into it. Hello guys, my name's Phil and welcome to this channel. So today we are going to be talking about task 2, and this video is really just an overview because when I started teaching I really didn't know anything about task 2, and I just think it's going to be helpful for you guys just to get a big picture of what it's about. So remember that task 2 is exactly the same for an academic IELTS test and a general IELTS test. In this part of the test, the student has to write an essay. However, it's not like any essay that you or I have ever written, like in school or university. It's a very, very short essay. They have a particular question, they have to write a minimum of 250 words, and within those 250 words, they have to do quite a lot in order to get a fairly good band score. So we're going to be talking about all these things today, so let's start with that. So what I'm going to do is put a link to the band score descriptors into the description of this video, because although these are publicly available, they're not really that easy to find on the British Council website nor on the IDP website. So I'm going to put links there so you know exactly where to find them. So looking through the band score descriptors for each band score, you can kind of get an idea of what the student has to do in order to hit those sort of band scores 6 to 7, which seems to be the average target most academic students have, because that's what they need to get into university. So generally what the student has to do across all 4 criteria, which is task response for task 2, lexical resource, grammatical range and accuracy, and let's not forget CC, cohesion and coherence. What they have to do is demonstrate that they've understood the task, that they have fulfilled everything that they've been asked to do within that essay question, that they are developing ideas well, referencing back to what they've said before, making it easy for the reader to follow their arguments. They're also using vocabulary in the right way, good collocations, not too many misuses of key vocabulary, and also showing a bit of a range of grammar, not just sticking to the simple tenses, using a bit more complex structures and things within it. So all of this is what you need to teach them in your lessons. But if we talk about task 2 in more general terms, so task 2 in the IELTS, as I said, was an essay question. Now, for me, there are only really 3 categories of essays. Although there are variations, there are only really 3 groups. And what I mean by that is you only really need to teach your students 3 distinct structures. So the way I split them up is there's an opinion essay or a thesis essay where they are being asked to give their opinion on a particular topic in the prompt. The next type I call both sides an opinion, also called a discussion essay. This is kind of your typical balanced essay where you explore 2 points of view and then conclude with an opinion. And the next one is what I call a 2-question essay. Basically, the student's been asked to talk about 2 things. They could be 2 completely different questions, or they could be, for example, advantages, disadvantages. So within those 3 categories, those 3 structures, the kind of questions can change a little bit how they're phrased, but generally the structure is the same. So only 3 structures. It makes it nice and easy for the students, I think. So the way that a task 2 IELTS essay is structured is quite simple. We start off with the introduction, then we have the main body of the essay, and then we have a conclusion. Very much like any typical university essay. In the introduction, there are generally maybe 2 to 3 sentences, at a pinch maybe 4. The way I teach it is the first sentence is always the same for any type of essay. In the first sentence, the student has to rephrase the prompt. They have to give the context or the topic of what they're writing about. So this is exactly the same process for any type of essay. The second sentence in the introduction is what we call the thesis statement. So this is where the student is telling the examiner exactly what they're going to read about in the essay. Now, for most of the essays, it's going to be a copy and paste job. What I mean by this is with both sides and opinion essays and the 2-question essays, the student is literally going to tell the examiner what they're going to do. In this essay, I will discuss both these views and then give my opinion. In this essay, I will explore the advantages and disadvantages. However, with the opinion essay, it's different. With the opinion essay, the student must state their opinion there in the introduction. If they don't, then they're not going to fulfill the task response. They're not going to get a high band score in that. It kind of makes sense, right? You start off an essay by saying what you're going to say, and if it's all about your opinion, you might as well say your opinion right there in the introduction. So once they've done the introduction, they're generally going to move on to the body and write 2 paragraphs. If you're writing an opinion essay, they will be writing 2 separate paragraphs. Each one of them is about a main point supporting their opinion. For the both sides an opinion essay, one of the body paragraphs will be about one point of view with reasons why somebody thinks that. And the other point of view will be in the second paragraph. Again, reasons for why someone thinks that. Not necessarily why the student agrees or disagrees, but why someone else thinks that. And then in the 2-question essay, you would have one paragraph exploring one side of, so one advantage, for example, or one problem. And then the other paragraph would be talking about the disadvantages or the solutions. So you're really dedicating one paragraph for each of the questions that you'll be given in the 2-question essay. So in the conclusion, really important thing to do is to tell the examiner that it's the conclusion. I always like to joke with my students that the examiners are incredibly stupid, and unless you tell them clearly what you're doing, you're going to get a low band score. It kind of just gets them to think, okay, I must make this very clear. So in the conclusion, they have to say something like in conclusion, to conclude, just to signal the examiner. And then what they're doing is generally summarizing what they've said. So in the opinion essay, they should be restating their opinion and briefly summarizing why. This is what they've said in the 2 body paragraphs. In the 2-question essay, they're doing the same thing. They're summarizing the main points they've made in the 2 paragraphs. So they were talking about a problem solution essay. They would briefly summarize the problem and talk about the solution again. However, the only difference here is with the conclusion of the both sides and opinion essay. This is the only place in the task 2 where we put new information, because what you do with the both sides and opinion essay is in the body you explore one point of view in one paragraph, the second point of view in the second paragraph, and then in the conclusion, that's when the student has to give their opinion. So if you show, this is what I like to do, if you show this student kind of like a table, so I put introduction and body and conclusion and then the 3 types of essays, and I just show them where the differences are, because most of it is exactly the same. The only real difference is the introduction in the opinion essay, that's different to the other 2, and the conclusion to the both sides and opinion essay, which again is different to the other 2 essays. I think it's nice to show them that in an early lesson, and then later on you go into each of the types of essays in more detail and really develop that structure a little bit more. So the biggest problems that I've seen my students make when they write a task 2 is firstly choosing the wrong structure. Quite often they confuse opinion essays and both sides and opinion essays. If they do that, if they state their opinion too early on in the both sides and opinion essay, then they're gonna get a bad score basically. So that's a bit of an issue. Another point is that they don't use referencing enough. This is something that doesn't naturally happen for non-natives, but teaching them how to refer to points they've made before will really help them with the CC, and it makes it much easier to follow what they're saying. The other thing which happens quite a lot is to use the wrong register. Things like referring to kids instead of children. I had a really good example where the student had a very high level sentence and they were talking about how it's imperative for for the care of children who supervises their education. And they had this brilliant sentence, and then they ended it with mummies and daddies, like a student, like a child kind of took over the last part of the sentence. This is register. So this is something that you need to teach them to make them aware of. In addition to not using the right structure, they don't have the right thesis. So they don't, either in an opinion essay, they don't say what their opinion is in the introduction, or they don't even give a thesis at all. They don't tell the examiner what they're going to do. And also, they don't signal the examiner in the conclusion. What I mean by that is they don't actually say in conclusion. So I always say to my students, your last paragraph is not your conclusion unless you tell the examiner that it is. Because, they could have run out of time, they didn't finish the essay. The examiner doesn't know unless it says in conclusion. Another big problem that the students have are writing irrelevant points. So irrelevant statements or examples. And it's really important to teach them the difference between what is relevant to their argument and what is just sort of going off on a tangent. And we will talk about this more in future videos on this channel, but it's something that I've seen quite a lot with students, and if they do that, it's really going to affect their CC score. And the other thing, and this is across the board, is students feel uncomfortable using complex grammar, or they don't know what is considered complex grammar. And quite often they just miss the opportunity. They like to stay in their comfort zones. So teaching them the correct usage of grammar is really essential in your classes, but also looking at essays and saying, identifying places where, this would have been a good place to have a contrasting structure. Here we're talking about results. How about we use the perfect tense? Things like this. If you can get this into your lessons, then I think it's really going to help your students boost their grammatical range and accuracy scores. Okay guys, if you've enjoyed this video so far, why not subscribe to the channel? Because in the future I'm going to be releasing more videos about Task 2, and I'm going to give you some real examples and some real lesson plans that we can work off and you can use in your classes to help your students obtain a better score. So thanks very much for watching, and I will see you in a future video. Bye bye.